to the channel. Today we're going to take a look at the R9 290. Today I want to find out whether this card can hold its own with today's AAA titles. Titles like Metro Exodus, The Division 2. Just see if we can get 60 frames a second at a decent quality at 1080p. If we can, these cards can be picked up pretty cheap second hand. But I've got quite a few games here. I've got about 5 or 6 games to go through. And I've made some charts for us, and I'll talk through them as we're going through the benchmarks and not do the usual montage. To try and get the video so you're a bit more involved in it. And then we'll have a chat about the pros and cons, the value and the price, and whether they're worth buying or not. Stick around and I'll see you later on. So we're testing the 290 on this machine. It's a R7 2700X processor running 3.9 GHz paired up with some 3200 MHz Corsair Vengeance Pro RAM. First up, we've got CSGO, averaging 204 frames per second with highs of 390 and lows of 140. Didn't expect anything else really. This game is so easy to run. So that's another big tick. Next up, we've got Devil May Cry 5 with average frames per second of 90 frames per second, highs of 137 and lows of 57. Now, I was very surprised how well this game ran. It ran with no problems, and I don't think it will have any problems. That's a tick. Next up is Resident Evil 2 with average frames per second of 87, highs of 242 and lows of 50. Everything was set to high on this game, as high as I could possibly go. Yet again, no problems whatsoever. So that's a tick. The Division 2. I tested this game on high and on ultra, as I had to use the in-game benchmark and I couldn't get lows and highs unless I used MSI Afterburner. But ultra we got average 55 frames per second and high we average 72 frames per second. It's a big tick in my book. Yet again, not a problem running this game, nice and smooth. And here we have F1 2018. I tested this on both on ultra high and high. And on ultra high we averaged 55 frames per second with highs of 75 and lows of 44. In the high settings we averaged 84 frames per second with highs of 106 and lows of 69. Yes, another tick, no problems. In Metro Exodus I tested it in medium and high, as I knew we wouldn't be able to do ultra on this game at all. But in high with everything off we averaged 46 frames per second. In high normal we averaged 36 frames per second. In medium with all off we averaged 60 frames per second, and in medium ordinary we averaged 53 frames per second. The game does run. I wouldn't expect you to run it any higher than this. Low is probably your best bet, but at the end of the day it did run. Well, there we go. Just to prove a point, yes, you can game on an R9 290. All the games extremely playable and extremely acceptable levels of detail. And to tell you the truth, I didn't have any problems with any of them apart from Metro Exodus. Now, if you're looking to play this game on a 290, you can play this game on a 290, but I suggest you put it in medium and take tessellation and PhysX off. Purely because the lows are too low and your will just gets stuttered constantly. Even better, maybe play it in low and take a few settings slightly up. But it still looks great. Even in medium with tessellation and PhysX off, it still looks absolutely great and is perfectly playable. Now, looking into the value of these cards, I have found them for under £100, anywhere between 50 and I would say £80 is value for money. But once you start going over that value for money, you might as well, if you're looking at £100, you're better off trying to pick up an RX 570, an RX 580 or a GTX 1060 6GB. I must emphasize, make sure it's a 6GB version, because although the 1060 3GB version is a decent card, it's not as good as a 290. You might as well buy the cheaper 290. Now, when I have looked about, I've like I say, I found them at varying prices, and for the performance boost you would get from a 580, an RX 580, which the cheapest one I've found secondhand is £120, which is a good £50 difference between the two cards. It doesn't really warrant as the benchmark says, 11% increase, because some games are better, some aren't. So if you have got that extra money, go for the 580, as the 1060s are even more expensive secondhand. So I still suggest at the price range, because the 580s are lower in price at the minute, go for a 580. If you can't afford a 580, possibly a 570, you will lose a little bit over the 290. But if you can pick a 290 up, pick one up. As you can see, the one I picked up, if I play the footage, as you can see, the one I picked up, when I picked it up, was absolutely filthy inside. But they take absolutely nothing to take apart. In fact, I have a video of taking one apart and replacing the fans, because one of the fans wasn't working very well. I did put the wrong size fans in, but this card still never goes over 80 degrees anyway. They are a little bit power hungry, and they can be a little bit noisy if they ramp up. Then every card can. If you're looking for advice, well, I would say the 290 is worth it if you can get it cheap enough. If you're going looking at £100 or over £100, please look into the 570s or the 580s. And anything above that, well, it's a buyer's market at the minute. So my conclusion for this video is, yes, the 290 does play games, does play AAA games in today's market, and it plays some of them extremely well, better than I expected, to tell you the truth, with, like I said, the exception of Metro Exodus, which does play just fine, just not at super high settings. So in conclusion, if you can pick one of these 290s up cheap enough, get one. If not, I would try and go for a 580 if you've got the budget. But if you're watching this, maybe you haven't got the budget and that's why you're watching it. So yes, go for a 290 or even a 290X. They're a little bit faster. So hopefully this was of some use, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care for now, bye bye, and have fun.